Clearly, Muslims don't have a problem immigrating to and living in Western countries, which are predominantly Christian historically, but Christians and Jews apparently can't live or are not welcome in their countries, at least not as full citizens with full legal protection. Did Tucker miss this? Does this not indicate something? And there are certain statements that have been made by both the Pope and Tucker Carlson that I think need to be addressed. And it has to do with Islam's disposition toward Christianity and toward the West. And we're also going to address some of Tucker Carlson's statements with respect to Christianity, not just in the Muslim countries in the Middle East, but also within Israel. Because it's important to look at these things in context to try to figure out, okay, is there something more to this? Are there certain things that we may have assumed, that I may have assumed that were incorrect? Are there certain statements that have recently been made that should reshape the way that we look at this part of the world? And that's what we're going to go through and look at today. So the first thing that we're going to address is this claim about Christians in each country with respect to Qatar and Israel, because this goes right to the heart, not just of Tucker's statement. It goes to the heart of some of the things that Pope talked about as well. This idea of, do we have a right to be concerned about Islam? Do we have ample demonstrations that Islam can peaceably coexist with Christianity? And so this claim that Tucker made that there's far more Christians in Qatar than in Israel is an important one. And I want to say right off the bat, he's not incorrect that there's more Christians in Qatar than Israel, but there's a little bit more to the story, and that's what we have to actually analyze. I went out and gathered the data on this, and here's what you find, is that in Qatar, there are about 400,000 Christians, and in Israel, there's 180 to 200,000. But then the next question I asked is, how many of them are citizens? So in Qatar, the answer is 0, and we'll get to a second on why that is. It's actually effectively impossible for non-Muslims to become citizens of Qatar. In Israel, there's 184,000 who are full citizens with full rights, which is to say they can vote, they can freely worship, they can serve in the Knesset, they can serve in the military. They essentially have full citizenship rights of any other citizen in Israel. So that's a pretty important, I would hope everyone agreed that's an important distinction. Now the question is going to be, well, then where did the 400,000 Christians in Qatar come from? Well, because it's 12% of the population compared to with only 2% of Israel. Well, who are they? They're foreign guest workers. They largely come from the Philippines, India, Ethiopia, Sri Lanka. And this is common within the Gulf states. When you look at very, very wealthy Gulf states like UAE, like Qatar, like Saudi Arabia, there is a massive foreign worker population because the citizens themselves basically are sustained off of a very elaborate welfare state. They're given preferential economic treatment. And so a lot of people from other countries are brought in to do a lot of the manual labor or the jobs that would be considered less desirable. And so it's important to understand that the 400,000 Christians that are being referred to by Tucker Carlson are not Qatari citizens. They're foreign workers. There may be people that are temporarily in the country working on something, but this is the important part to understand. Their legal status is they are all temporary residents with no pathway to citizenship outside of rejecting Christianity and adopting Islam. Can they stay permanently? No. They must leave when their work visas expire. So here's what I would ask you to consider. This is not hard information to find. Qatar doesn't hide the ball on this. So why does Tucker keep insisting upon it as if this is some sort of silver bullet which proves his point? And just to dig into this a little bit deeper, let's look at religious freedom laws in each country. Oh, in Qatar, do you have freedom of worship? Well, you're permitted in private for non-Muslims. So if you're a Muslim, you can worship in public. If you're a non-Muslim, you cannot. In Israel, you have the full right to worship in public. What about building churches? There's 8 churches, all in a designed worship village, gated compound. Again, this is where the temporary foreign workers live. That's the reality in Qatar. What's the reality in Israel? There's 300 active churches, and there's new ones can be built freely. There's no legal prohibition on it. What about having a cross on a building exterior? This is prohibited in Qatar. It's permitted in Israel. What about church bills? Prohibited in Qatar. Permitted in Israel. What about public religious processions? Well, if they're not Islamic, they're not permitted in Qatar, but they are permitted in Israel. What about being able to convert to a Muslim or converting a Muslim away from Islam? In Qatar, that's a criminal offense, which is punishable by deportation or prosecution. In Israel, it's legal. What about Muslims converting out? So let's say you're a Muslim, you live in one of these countries and decide to convert to a different religion. In Qatar, that's criminal apostasy. In Israel, It is legal for people to convert to various religions whenever they want. They have full freedom. Then you have blasphemy laws. You have non-Muslim proselytizing. Again, it's strictly prohibited to try to convert people to Christianity in Qatar. It is perfectly legal to try to convert people to Christianity in Israel. So again, I am struggling with this because this is not so much a question of whether or not you like the Israeli government or don't like the Israeli government. This is not a question of whether or not you approve of Benjamin Netanyahu or not. This is a question about what sort of laws are actually on the books. And there is zero question when one looks at those laws that Christians are able to freely live, become citizens, exercise their religious beliefs privately and publicly with no restrictions, no legal restrictions on them in Israel. And the opposite is true in Qatar. Is Tucker just completely unaware of this? We'll go into some of the claims he's made too, where he talks about this Christian persecution, and we'll ask honest questions about it. But I also want to talk about this one. Holding public office. So can non-Muslims vote in Qatar? No. Can they vote in Israel? Yes. Can Christians hold office in Qatar? No. Can they hold office in Israel? Yes, they can and have. Can there be Arab members of parliament in Israel? Yes. Can you have a non-Muslim serve on the Supreme Court in Qatar? No. There is a Muslim serving on the Supreme Court in Israel. Can you have non-Muslim cabinet members in Qatar? No. You can't have them in Israel. Is there Jewish political representation in Qatar? No, Jews can't even enter Qatar without special dispensation. What about in Israel? Well, of course, because it's a Jewish state. I mean, this is also the thing where when it comes to service in the military, if you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you're a secular atheist, if you're a Jew, you can serve in the military in Israel. You cannot serve. Christians cannot be citizens in Qatar, so you can't serve in the military. Again, Tucker, was this hard to find? I looked at the history of Christians living in Islamic countries from 1900 to the present day. In Turkey in 1900, it was 20% of the population. There's been a 99% change in that, a 99% reduction. In Iraq, there used to be 1.4 million Christians. Now there's only 120 to 150,000. That's an 89% change. In Syria, Christians used to be 30% of the population. That's gone down by 80%. In Egypt, it was 20% of the population. Now it's gone down 50%. In the Palestinian territories, it used to be 15 to 20% of the population of Bethlehem. That's gone down 90%. Keep in mind, when Tucker Carlson talks about Christians being persecuted in Israel, he is actually including sections of Israel which are Israeli territory, but under the Palestinian Authority. So there were more Christians in Bethlehem when the Israelis were running it than when the Palestinian Authority took over. How do you miss that? This is not, how is this up for interpretation?
Well, this brings me to my next point, and this is specifically referencing the country that the Pope referenced, and that's Islam or Lebanon, because he said Lebanon is this example of Christians and Muslims living together in relative peace and mutual respect. Lebanon was a majority Christian country, and then a couple of things happened. One, Palestinian refugees who got kicked out of Jordan because they tried to overthrow the Hashemite kingdom
and assassinated the Jordanian prime minister.
Even when Jordan gave them sanctuary, moved to Lebanon and helped, along with Hezbollah, destabilize the government up there, overthrow the Christian government. And now it went from a majority Christian country to 33% and falling. So where exactly is Lebanon a great example of Muslims and Christians living in harmony with one another? The more the Muslim population increased in Lebanon, right, the less Christian it became, not just from a population standpoint, culturally, politically. Then you look at places like Algeria, Libya, and Tunisia. There were indigenous Christian communities, and now it's effectively zero. Saudi Arabia and the GCC, when you talk about GCC, this is like the Gulf states. We look at like Bahrain, Yemen, Oman, UAE. They didn't really have much of an indigenous Christian population to begin with. But can we see here right now, like this is a drastic decrease in population of Christians in predominantly Islamic countries. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, you know, Nick, sure, maybe Christians just want to live in Christian countries and Muslims want to live in Muslim countries. Okay, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that next. The other thing I want to point out, though, has to do with the Jewish population, because again, you hear from Tucker, you hear from Candace, you hear from others that Israel is an apartheid state. Okay, well, there used to be Jews in all these other countries as well within the Middle East. So there was 130 in 1900. There was 135,000 Jews in Iraq. Now there's 5. There was 60,000 in Yemen. Now there's 1. 80,000 in Egypt. Now there's 6. 140,000 in Algeria. 0. 38,000 in Libya. 0. 100,000 in Iran. Now there's 8 to 10,000. 65,000 in Morocco. Now it's 2 to 3,000. All Arab and Muslim majority countries, 900,000 Jews used to live there. Now it's about 15,000. But what about Muslims? Again, maybe it was, well, fine. When Israel came along, all the Jews can go live in Israel. And the Christians are going to live in Christian states and the Muslims are going to live in Muslim states, right? Except Muslim growth in the United States has increased and the West has increased exponentially. So when we look at the United States, in 1900, there was about 10,000. Now there's 5 million. That's a 44,900% increase. In the United Kingdom in 1900, there was almost no Muslims. Now there's 4.5 million. That's 6.5% of the population. In France, there was almost none. Now there's 6 million. That's 9% of the population. In Germany, there was almost none. Now there's 6 million. That's 7% of the population. In Western Europe total, there was almost none. Now there's 45 to 50 million. 6% of Europe. In the entire Western world, there was near zero in 1900, and now there's 60 to 65 million with full legal protection everywhere. So clearly, Muslims don't have a problem immigrating to and living in Western countries, which are predominantly Christian historically, but Christians and Jews apparently can't live or are not welcome in their countries, at least not as full citizens with full legal protection. Did Tucker miss this? Does this not indicate something? And the same thing, we can go on with this. We go into things like Muslims in public office in Israel. Muslims serve in the Israeli Knesset, the Supreme Court, the cabinet, and the military. There's 42 Muslims elected across 9 states in the United States. Zohran Mamdani is the first Muslim mayor governing 8.8 million people. Hamtramck, I always mispronounce that, in Michigan is an all-Muslim city council, only Muslim majority city in America. Congress has multiple Muslim members of the House of Representatives. By the way, I would just like to ask anybody, out of all those Muslim members of the House of Representatives, when you look at like Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar, are these people that you feel like have a great deal of love for the United States of America? Do they have a great deal of love for the philosophy which informed our Declaration of Independence and Constitution? Judges, we have Muslim judges, and mosques have tripled in the last 30 years to 2,769. How about in the United Kingdom? 25 Muslim MPs elected July 2024. Mayor of Greater London is Sadiq Khan. Other mayors in the UK include Newham, Oldham, Luton, Rotherham, Oxford, Brighton, Solihull, all with Muslim mayors. Sharia councils. There are 85 operating Sharia councils issuing binding rulings on family law in the UK, with 1,500 mosques. Are there any Christian courts in the Muslim world? All of Western Europe, 19 Muslim MPs in France, Muslim Lord Mayor of Hanover since 2019 in Germany, Muslim Mayor of Rotterdam for the last 15 years in the Netherlands. Islam is recognized as an official religion since 1974 in Belgium, Canada. Okay, now how many Christians or Jews are in public office in Islamic countries? Saudi Arabia, 0. Qatar, 0. UAE, 0. Afghanistan, 0. Pakistan has 10 allocated, not elected seats for minorities out of 336. Iran has 5 reserved parliamentary seats, but under constant persecution. Egypt has 36 seats out of 596 for 10% Coptic community. Jordan has 9 constitutional quota seats without quota, near zero representation. Lebanon, the president must be Christian because that's written in the Constitution, but Hezbollah has blocked the presidency for years at a time. So here's like the overall metric. Elected mayors in the West, 20 in major cities governing 43 million people. Christian or Jewish mayors in the Islamic world, 0. National legislators, 25 in UK, 19 in France, 12 in Israel, several more in the United States and other Western countries, 0 in the GCC. Allocated quotas elsewhere. Parallel legal system, 85 Sharia councils in the UK alone. No Christian canon law courts permitted in any Muslim majority country. And the population trajectory. Muslims in the West is growing at 44 to 45% per decade, and Christians and Jews in the Islamic world is collapsing at a rate of 87 to 99.9% over the last 125 years. Does this sound like a friendly environment for Christians, or is it just for Christians like Tucker Carlson? The Pope is permitted to visit Lebanon as a Christian with relative assurance that he's not going to experience any danger. Does that mean that's the experience of the Christians living in Lebanon? Let's go to the next one, because I think this is one that specifically I would, again, respectfully, like the Pope and the Council of Cardinals, to take a hard look at. This is the master persecution table of religious-oriented persecution in the world. We're going to look at the top 10 most persecuted groups. Ready? Number 1, Christians. What country? Nigeria. Who are the perpetrators? Islamist militias, Boko Haram, ISWAP, Fulani herdsmen. What about number 2? Christians, state and non-state Islamic actors around 50 countries globally. 388 million Christians face persecution globally, record high, up 8 million from 2024. And again, the primary perpetrators, state and non-state Islamic actors. How about number 3? Christians.
This time it's the communists. North Korean state, #1 ranked country. Christians face death, concentration camps, estimated 50 to 70,000 Christians in labor camps. Have you ever noticed that the more secularized the Islamic countries become, the more socialist they become? Go ask yourself, in the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, where did those countries largely align themselves with? Not all of them. Some of them align with the United States. Number four on the most victims for religious persecution, Christians. So Christians occupy all top 4 spaces. And where is this? Syria. Who are the perpetrators? Islamist militants. Once again. All right, but maybe as we get into the next 6, it'll change. Nope. Number 5, Christians. Where? Pakistan. From who? Islamist militants. Number 6, Christians. Where? Iran. From who? The Islamic State and the IRGC. Number 7, who? Christians. Where? Somalia. From who? Al-Shabaab and other Islamist and Al-Qaeda affiliated groups. Number 8, who? Christians. Where? Sudan. Who? Islamist groups in a civil war. Number 9, we got somebody else added to it. Christians and Hindus, partially from the Hindu nationalist movement in India. Number 10, back to Christians, Saudi Arabia. 0 churches, Bible illegal in public, no pathway to citizenship, 1.5 million Christian workers with no rights. Are we noticing any pattern? Right? Tucker Carlson wants to get on there and say, the people in power don't want you to know that Muslims love Jesus. Muslims deny the divinity of Jesus. They deny who Jesus was. Their version of Jesus is something that does not correspond with who Christians believe Jesus is. So this idea that they love Jesus or they revere Jesus, they sure do kill a lot of his followers. They sure do persecute a lot of his followers. They sure have run a lot of his followers out of all of their countries. They sure do insist that his followers don't have legal rights in their countries, can serve in office in their countries. Did Tucker miss this? Again, respectfully to the Pope, when he advises us that, gosh, we just shouldn't be this concerned about Islam. When Pope Francis signed this document about living in harmony, can you please show me the majority Muslim country, the country that's run by Sharia law, which is hospitable to Christians?
You built all this yourself, didn't you?
Yeah, this took some time. The part I'm having a real hard time with here is this is obvious. This is not propaganda. Okay, I didn't call up Benjamin Netanyahu and have him put this together for me.
You didn't get your $7,000.
I didn't get my 7,000 shekels, and yet I'm watching all of these people who again claim to be hardcore Christians. Tucker Carlson just had someone on saying that the real problem with Christianity is the Zionists, because honestly, Christianity is socialist, not capitalist. Can you name me a socialist country that has been friendly to Christianity? Karl Marx despised Christianity. He despised religious faith in general, but especially Christianity and Jews. I mean, I'm looking at this going, where is this coming from? And we did an episode a while back where we talked about the fact that the left has always kind of played this game with Islam, and it's a little bit confusing, right? How could the left, like the socialists, the atheists, the woke, the postmodernists, why would they align themselves with kind of a hardcore religion that believes in proselytizing through the sword? And the answer is, and Michael Foucault demonstrated this when he actually went to Iran in 1979 and cheered on the Islamic Revolution, even though Michael Foucault was a very, very strange, godfather of postmodernism, very, very progressive. Why would he cheer on Islam taking over a country? Because it was anti-Western. And because when the revolution happened in Iran, initially, it wasn't just the religious faction, it was also the socialist, it was the Marxist faction within Iran that was rising up against the Shah. And so if you're a Marxist and you hate the West and you hate capitalism, and ultimately you're also anti-Christian, anti-traditional family, you don't got to take my word for it. Go read Marx. Marx and Engels did not hide the ball on this stuff. They wanted your children raised collectively, educated collectively, and they wanted the religion educated right out of them. Why would they team up with the Islamic Republic? Well, because it represented fighting against the West. It represented fighting against Christians and Jews. It represented fighting against capitalism. And so that was a worthwhile ally.
If you have a 401k or an IRA, please listen. Gold is at record highs. What many people don't know is this: you can move part of your retirement money legally and without tax penalties into physical gold you actually own. Alpha Omega Gold helps you do this through a gold IRA. Your gold is real. It is stored safely. It is in your name. Learn more at ao.gold/stand. Alpha Omega Gold is our sponsor, and they proudly stand with Israel.